that pandemic screwed me up too. Seriously.
All right. First, open-ended question. I'm not gonna be asking a whole lot of questions. It's just open-ended. Just tell your story. So, but the first intro is, how has the area changed before your eyes? As in, Cabrini Greens.
As far as the people, as far as the buildings, it has changed totally. Um, but if I be honest, I say I seen it coming. I know it's coming. But
Can
it's,
you, can you talk about like, what do you mean when you say you saw it coming?
it was a plan from a long time ago. Even my grandmother and them knew. They told us all about it. So, but it was nothing that could be done. I noticed when they stopped doing the maintenance on the buildings, on the property, the buildings that wasn't always raggedy. They allowed them to get that way as part of the plan, so that we would have to move, and it happened. So now they replaced them, and it's like the neighborhood was never there.
Yeah,
You know what I
literally.
mean?
Yeah.
It's like it was never there, man. They wiped it away, and they made some promises that 30% of the people from there would be allowed to return, but they got so many stipulations, so many rules, and you know it's set up. It's all set up to work in a certain direction. You know what I mean? So some people were allowed to come back. Some came back and couldn't cope with the rules changes, and some. My main concern, I would say, was for the older people. You know, as long as they were able to come back. You know, young people, they have, they're resilient. They can make it, but so a lot of the old people got lost in the shuffle. So, but yeah, it definitely changed, man. It displaced a lot of people, and it's part of the reason why the city is in such an uproar. It's a reason why the city is like experiencing so much violence, because all those displaced people wound up in those other neighborhoods, and some people didn't want them in their neighborhood, but they didn't have nowhere else to go, and everybody on guns nowadays. So there you go. Not just Cabrini, they shut down all the buildings, but especially Cabrini. You got to remember Cabrini. What made Cabrini different from all the other projects is this: it's down the street from Michigan Avenue, the Gold Coast,
Yep.
the beach, Lincoln Park. So it was always, like they felt like we made a mistake
Yeah.
when we gave these people this. How do we get it back?
Mm-hmm.
So very soon after the people moved there, trying to figure out how to get it back. It just took them this long, and now they got it back, and they'll never let that happen again.
When you say like these people and plan, could you talk about that more?
Yeah, well, I hate to be crying the same old song, but the people in charge. I believe it's a group of people in charge, but not just the city, not just Cabrini, but this country. You know what I mean? And by whatever means, they figure out a way to have things their way. Some plans are slow, some plans are fast, but they usually work their number, and they work it with their neighborhood. You know what I mean? Some people say, even people from the Greens say, man, we gave it back, or y'all gave it back. That's not all the way true. That's not all the way true. And there was some nonsense that went on, but it's a lot of hands involved that you can't rightly see, but that don't mean they're not involved. You know what I'm saying? So things happen. It's a lot of things that happen that makes one thing. You know what I mean? And so it was just something that had to be done. They had to have the area back, because here's another reason nobody talks about. Here's another thing nobody talks about. Those families that moved to the suburbs, their children didn't want nothing to do with the suburbs. Their children wanted to be in the city. So guess what? They needed somewhere for their babies to be. They needed somewhere for their kids to live. So they found some places to live in our neighborhoods. We have to move around so people can have somewhere to live. That's, nobody talks about that part of it. blame people for taking care of their children. You know what I'm saying? But they sacrifice our children for their children. You know what I mean? They don't want us to live together. That's a lie they tell. They don't, cause they don't make the rules fair. They don't make the rules even. So that's what happened. And it's done changed. And you see a few people from the old neighborhood still there, walking on eggshells. You know what I mean? But not that many. Not that many. That's what happened.
How did you see the process unfold before your eyes too? Kind of where was the starting point where everyone kind of might have noticed things were moving?
When they stopped with the upkeep of the property.
And about when was that in correlation to your life?
And it was part of my adulthood. I was a young adult, maybe in my 30s. I lose time a lot. I remember all the events, but I'm not good at saying this year at that month. You know what I mean? But I was a young adult. You know, it went with some things like, this may be hard to believe, but I lived in a building, 1017 Larrabee, where they came and told us one day, we not fixing the elevator. This was a 10-story building. And they said, we not fixing this elevator. It costs too much to fix. That was a sign right there, man. You know, they don't put no more money in. It's time for us to go. Instead of being 3 or 4 janitors to a building, they squared it down to 1 janitor. So they talk about, you know, condition, and yeah, some guys did piss everywhere, but you know, they be drunk. But I remember a time when I was young, you couldn't tell because you had enough janitors. But when you got 1 man doing a job of 4 men, some things gonna show up, and that was part of it too. I watched all that. You gotta remember, I've been there since the beginning for a long time. I was there in the 60s when it wasn't no gang fights and pissing in the hallway. And, you know, it was a real village before. You know what I mean? I knew all the old people. I knew who made the pound cakes. I knew who fried fish every Friday. You know what I mean? It was different. But I think what was part of the plot too, from them people you hear me mention, part of the plot was they started giving those apartments to people too young. You know what I mean? They started giving those apartments out to irresponsible people. You know what I mean? And they hid under the fact that girls need somewhere to stay with their children. But you know, if you got young girls living somewhere, here come the young boys. So one thing led to another. And they knew. How do you not know? Then people have think tanks. They know everything just about. So they knew what was going on. And it was part of getting to where we at now. They gone, we got the property. That's just what I believe. Yeah.
Why did you think that, I guess people can say that was a plot, but I guess other people can say that's a lot of things. So I guess what is the distinction between, why do you feel that it was done to you?
Well, I think it was done to an area because they wanted the area. I think it was all about the real estate for different reasons. Like I mentioned, for a group of people to be able to come back and stay in the city, for financial reasons, for building. It's a lot of reasons that, and I guess it all comes down to money, because with us there, they're only going to get so much money. With us out of there, the sky's the limit on how much money. Look at the properties now. Look at the rent they charging now. You know what I mean? So it was definitely monetary. You know what I mean? It was definitely monetary. So we were just in the way. That's all. We were just in the way.
So it kind of brings up the question, why would they build it there in the first place if they want to take it back?
Well, my grandma said it was built as a stepping stone originally, like somewhere to brace yourself and step off and do better. Well, some people stop stepping off, and that became a problem. You know what I mean? For whatever reasons, people just start staying there. Wasn't doing any better. You know what I mean? And I guess welfare helped with that. You know, people just settled. You had a whole group of people just settled. You know what I mean? Uneducated people, people that didn't want to work. And they made it easy for them. Just stay here, you know what I mean? And then it became a big, big problem. Now, don't get me wrong, all the time, they had other families there who worked and went to work, but you still had those other families that, for lack of better words, was lazy and didn't try hard.
Why do you think they didn't try hard?
I think it has to do with information and goals. You know, people can only do what they know. Some of these people, they know nothing to do. You know, a lot of these people came from down south or whatever. They knew how to cook and feed and all that, but you'd be surprised who actually knows how to prepare themselves to go get a job or to do an interview. And when you don't have those skills, it's like intimidating, it's frightening. You know what I mean? And it's sad to say, but some people scared of other races. Like, some races fear us for one thing, well, my race fear them for another thing. You know what I mean? They don't. You know, they've been brainwashed that they're not good enough or smart enough to look them in the eyes and talk to them. So therefore, they don't, and they suffer because of it. So they get stuck, and a lot of them are stuck.
Yeah. So, kind of doing some research, like there was a ton of federal aid of all types, education programs, welfare, food stamps, the list goes on, job training, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But people just were not.
Some of it wasn't accepted. Some of them didn't do the work for different reasons. I mean, I wish they would have been pushed more. You know what I mean? Then, you know, we got to factor in crime. You know what I'm saying? The monetary wealth of crime. You know, that deter you. You know what I mean? From going to work. When you can get money other ways. You know what I mean? And lots of it. Then that kicked in. So, you know, you got, it's like, it's almost like a pot of soup. It's got all kind of stuff in it, man. It's got all kind of stuff in it that made it what it is, the final product. You know? But yeah, everybody didn't do their best, but everybody didn't do some of the bad things that they're paying for. You know, everything wasn't bad. Everybody wasn't lazy. Everybody wasn't on welfare. I know families. I had a friend. His mom them. This is in like the 80s maybe. His mom then was paying $800 a month to live in Cabrini Green, when my parents was paying $40 a month because of their income. So it was all kind of families there. You know what I mean? But when they allowed any and everybody to have those apartments, and that just only makes me note that and leads me back to say it was part of a plot. It was part of a plan.
And what was that plan?
To get rid of the people. To make a situation as worse as it could be. So therefore we have no choice. We have to get rid of this. Because it can't be fixed. They wanted it to appear that it was so broken, it can't be fixed. So you got to rid yourself of it. And that's what they did. And they shut down the buildings, cut out all the maintenance, let the buildings just deteriorate. And then they put everybody out. Oh, they gave them some apartments, different places, Section 8s. That's what they did. They came and offered everybody Section 8s. But then you got to go only who knows where, you know what I mean? And that's what's going on right now. That's why the city is in uproar. I think it leads me back to say that. Because it's like they opened up them other worlds. So long as those people was in the projects, they was in their own world, they was doing their own thing. Everybody else didn't get to feel it. But now you close their world and you open up that door to your world, to their world, this is what you get. And now you got like, what, 8 different projects that closed down? Mm-hmm. Guess what you got? You got a problem on your hands.
Yeah, they didn't actually solve the problem. They just moved it
They
away from downtown.
Yeah, they moved them down, and they made it more citywide.
Yeah.
It's more citywide now.
Geographically.
Yeah, they're everywhere. That's why all up and down the highways shooting people and everything you can think of.
So you're saying it's essentially the deterioration of the projects, which were meant to be somewhere to start off with, and hopefully get you off of welfare and build wealth and have your kids attain an education. You know, the deterioration essentially just was purposely plotted to remove those people. Let's
say it was allowed, so we'll soften it a little bit. Let's say it was allowed to get to a point. You know what? And I guess I'm being nice when I say it was allowed. They planned it. Even with the schools, man. The schools are not up to par in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? So no, I'm not gonna soften it. They perpetrated it. They did it. You know, they did it. They watched it go sad. They created a problem, and they stood back and watched it get bad. You know what I mean? And that's just what happened.
Many people, I guess, can also argue though, like the feds was throwing a lot of money, almost $1 billion, the federal government put into all of these programs combined, and they can kind of wash their hands and be like, well, we gave them the money, we put everything in place, it's their fault because they didn't take advantage of the opportunity.
We tried. That's the old we tried thing. Right, but how do you try something without information? You know, you didn't give them the right information. It's like you set them up to fail so that you can say, oh, we tried. You know, it's, you know, and I hate these arguments about drugs and different things, but, you know, it almost like sounds like a cop-out, but where else did the dope come from? We don't own no boats or no airplanes. And I've seen so much dope and drugs in my neighborhood to make your head spin. But you gotta remember, these was people with no money. All the welfare checks in the neighborhood went by that much dope that's coming in them neighborhoods. They had help. Somebody. You know what I mean? So.
Can you go deeper into that?
Yeah, it wasn't us that had the dope, it was the white folks that had the dope. Yeah, that's who had it. And it might have been the feds. We don't know. But I know between me and the people I know, and I know all the people, we didn't have enough money on our own to buy all the dope that was in our neighborhood. We just didn't.
Are there any stories that you can tell that kind of touch on that?
Well, it's stories such as this. Certain dudes was in the bed with police. Certain dudes never went to jail when they got caught. That I know for sure. Have I ever seen them handle some dope? No. But have I ever seen them let them get away with selling dope? Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen them guys with their own phones that the police supplied them with so they could communicate. I'm talking about guys who sell dope. Not just guys who using dope and get busted. I'm talking about some of the big wiggers was cool with some of the police. It's kind of suspicious to me. But it happened. And that's not what nobody told me. I lived through it. I seen it. Yeah. It happened. It happened. So it's just like I said earlier. It's like a big old pot of soup. It's a lot going on. You know what I mean? It's a lot going on, man. But back to my neighborhood. My neighborhood wasn't no bad place. It became a bad place. But it wasn't no bad place. Some bad things started to happen in it. But I remember when, man, it was full of love, man. All the old people. We played outside. We did everything. You know what I mean? I remember when there wasn't no gunfire. I remember when there wasn't no gunshots in my neighborhood. I do. I remember. And I believe if somebody would have tried harder, things could have been better.
Who's that somebody?
Police, the government, the mayor, the governor, politicians, well, whatever it is they can do. I understand everybody's hands is tied and all this and all that, but it's still you can do more than you do. You know what I mean? They can do more than they do, but they just do it for who they want to do it for. It wasn't us. You know what I mean? So it goes back to they wanted that land. They wanted the land for more reasons than one, and now they got it, and they're not giving it back. That's how that went.
What are some other reasons you think that this land was taken back, essentially?
Other than money, then people need somewhere to stay. And
Who's them people?
like I tried to explain it, the people with the money who moved to the suburbs from the city, most of the wealth lives in the suburbs. We agree to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Their children don't want to live in the suburbs. Their children want to be in the city, where the nightlife at, where all the happenings at, where Michigan Avenue at. So guess what? They gotta have somewhere for them to stay. And if you look around, take them buildings. Everywhere you look, they got skyscrapers. They got big buildings for them everywhere. And that's what's right. That's what it is. It boils down to money and care for each other. They did it for each other. And that's the way they do everything. So it's fixed. You know what I mean? It's fixed. Yeah. But I miss my neighborhood. I don't think it's gonna ever be another one like it. I don't. I miss my neighborhood. It's a great location. That's why they wanted Cabrini. The location, man. It's just a great location. Can you imagine waking up? You can walk to the lake in 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I live over there.
Right
there.
You can walk.
Best location ever. Literally.
You think they're gonna let them people keep that? Not for real. So everybody else had to suffer too because they didn't want to make it look like we just after the greens. That'd have been too much. So they got to do it citywide. Cause there's still a couple projects left, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And you go to New York, any other places, all of them, everybody still got their projects. Just to tell you something, though. Chicago is its own monster too.
Yeah.
It's its own monster. Yeah, it's its own monster. But yeah, that's what they did. And ain't nothing we can do about it.
Do you think they'll ever? Well, theoretically, things were demolished around like 2011. That was kind of the last of it. And there's been a huge infighting, politics, what have you, about. I guess what I'm trying to say is when everything was getting knocked down, like you said, there was promises of
return.
Of a return. Let's knock them down and possibly essentially
rebuild
them and not I mean, you say their plot was intentionally to displace them, but essentially rather, believe it or not, like these people were displaced with the promise, though, of having a returning building. And as we know,
well, returning to the new buildings.
Yeah, new buildings.
That's what was promised.
Yeah.
But now, here's a new thing that's going on, a new fight that I'll tell you about.
Okay.
They have what they call the row houses.
Yeah,
which is part of the Cabrini. Okay, it's a lady, Miss Steele. She's been fighting for it. She's a neighborhood advocate lady, good lady, far as I know. And she's in a fight right now with them about reforming and redoing them. They never tore down the row houses. They just closed them down.
Yeah.
So they got one whole block that's still up that people live in. Regular neighborhood people that never left, right? So the other, say, I don't know, 100, 200 units that's closed, she fought that they don't tear them down. Now they say she's supposed to won a victory to remodel them all, to redo them all. Right? That's what the guy's saying. That's what the street's saying. That she won. So everybody's happy about that. Everyone won't keep the row houses. They open them back up. Well, then they came with another thing, saying no, they taking her to court for misappropriation of funds. So she did something funny with the money. You know what I mean? So now that's the battle that's going on. How true it is, I don't know. How acceptable it's going to be, I don't know. But I think she was a good lady. I think she did some good things. But I think she in their way. So they, you guys never brought up none of this stuff that this lady did. But the minute she win her case to keep this here neighborhood, they found something. And they found, this is the part that's real sickening. They found a previous employee of hers or something. They're supposed to rat her out or something. I don't know. But that's what the streets are saying, you know what I mean? So, I don't know what's going on. But that's supposed to be now at a standstill. So they may not be keeping that. I don't know.
And what do you think that will mean for the community? If that also is demolished?
It's going to hurt. It's going to be like pie in your face. It's going to be like salt in the wound. Because we thought we didn't have nothing else. We had the row houses. You know what I mean? But, maybe not. Maybe not.
And where will those people go?
The few that's there, they may keep that one block. It's the other 3 blocks that they're not going to allow. Now, the one block that's there, it's been totally rehabbed. It's nice, it's beautiful, it's comfortable, all that. So I don't very well see them just tearing that down. They may just keep that one block and tear down the other 3. Because they haven't done any work to them.
Is there promise of return, or you have a Section 8 voucher now, or anything?
Well, the 3 blocks that's there, no one lives in them. They already, they've been condemned. They even got a fence around them that was set up for the demolition. Yeah. But she stopped it somehow, some way. So the 1 block is all that they have that has people living in it. And I figure they'll keep that.
So it will be rehabbed, and then what?
Say again?
So they'll rehab the 3 they want to tear down. They're probably going to, of course, build something on top of that. Is that going back to the residents?
Well, it's supposed to be every property that had a building, whatever built on that property.
Like a project building?
Yes, just a housing, whatever, condo, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
30% of it's supposed to be for public housing.
Yeah.
So I don't know how true if they holding to that or not, but that was the promise.
I will tell you though, based on my knowledge, that is true legally. However, if you are building in that area, that is true. And here's the kicker: you're allowed to not meet that requirement if you're willing to pay fines. So people are willing to pay fines
just to keep them out. And that wasn't part of the original deal. Nobody told them about fines, I'm sure. But here we go again. They impose their will. You know what I mean? That's what happens. So they get rid of us a little more. You know. So yeah. And sooner or later the fines will go away, I'm sure. So as long as nobody's watching, as long as people watching, they'll pay the fines. When the people stop watching, it becomes regular. They'll stop the fines. They won't need them anymore because no one's paying attention. So that's what they do, man. We can, it's all in the news. Everybody knows what's what, who's who. What America really is now. A big lie. Everybody knows. So, it's like, it's not cool to say it, but I say it. The trickle don't mess with me. The trickle down, it don't bother me. I know I stay away from the trickle down. I stay away from the upswing. You know what I mean? Because it's all tainted to me. It's all tainted, man. It's a game they play. You know what I mean? We just have to get what we're going to get and do what we're going to do.
Can you talk more about that? It's really interesting.
What do you mean?
About, what do you mean when you say you're trying to stay away from basically economic fluctuations, trickle down, swing ups, and what is the big lie? What's so tainted about it? And how do you fit?
The big lie is it's money and what you do with your money and how you get your money. Now, I can't venture to tell you all the ways of obtaining money, but I'll tell you this: it's different ways to handle your money when you get it. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm just gonna be open and say this. Everybody was screaming about the stimulus, this, stimulus, that. Brother, I
What?
got the stimulus.
Oh, stimulus.
Everybody was making a big hoopla about that. Whether I got it or not, I was gonna be the same. You know what I mean? Because I live in such a way that I make sure I'm okay. I make sure it's like I don't get caught up on depending on the system because it's not safe. You don't never know what they're gonna do. You know what I mean? You gotta make your own bones. I mean, whatever you're into, whatever you're into. If you go to work, whatever, you gotta be smart, man. You gotta be cunning, with your finances. You know what I mean? You have to. I would say I'm not telling you to be a crook, but I'll tell you this: don't follow all the rules because they don't fit.
What do you mean by that?
If you follow everything they tell you to do, then you'll be pigeonholed where they want you, and that's not what I want to be. I don't want to be pigeonholed. I don't want to be predictable. I don't want to be able to put their finger on me and say, yeah, he's right there. You know what I mean? So that's basically how that goes. But, it's okay. I guess I better say this. I wouldn't want to live in any other country.
So would you define that as the American dream?
The American dream is a nightmare because they slick and they lie. America is the greatest spin doctor in the world. You know what I mean? And when you no longer are beneficial to America, they really don't give a shit about you. Excuse my language. We know who America is. They robbers. They users. And America is not who you see every day. You don't even see the real America. The people who run this joint, we don't get to see them. You know what I mean? But they run it. Trust me, no. That's it's like two Americas. The one you see and the one you don't see. And the one you don't see is the one in charge. Yeah, believe it or not. That's how it goes. So, what you see is one thing. And it can be pretty, beautiful, ice cream shops on the corner. You know what I mean? All that, but that's not the real, true story of America. That's the facade. That's what they show you. They show you this beautiful thing, or they're sucking it to you over here. That's what they do. You ever notice this about this country? People who do the less work make the most money. You ever notice that? Ain't that kind of backwards? Tell you about America.
How do you think that's related to the situation of your childhood and Cabrini Greens and the building and tearing down of all that, given what you just said?
It's all part of their plot, their decision. See, you can almost say with Cabrini Green, they righted a wrong.
They're righting a wrong?
They righted a wrong, they felt like.
Okay.
They felt like they righted a wrong. They felt like, shit, we made a mistake when we put them in there. It didn't even have to be, even if they wouldn't have been shooting, selling dope and all that, their asses were still out of there. For some reason, they're going to find a reason. Because they wanted that space. They wanted that space, man. Now, I don't quote me on it, don't bet on this, but if I remember right, it was originally supposed to be like for Army people, Army base, so Army for people for the service. I think it's what my grandma told me, something like that. And people just stopped believing. They just start standing there. They got lazy. But don't think black people got lazy because you got more white folks on welfare than anybody. So people get lazy. You know what I mean? And they got lazy. And they never moved no more. Then they stopped going to school. Schools wasn't good enough. Just, it's an old story, man.
What caused the laziness and all that?
Things being too easy. Things being too easy. That's what caused it. Things being too easy. Yeah. Things being too easy. That made them, you don't gotta do, some people are not self-motivated. You know what I mean? And when you don't have a family structure to push those who are not self-motivated, then you can get that problem there. Yeah, pretty much.
On one end, you could say like these people need more personal responsibility, but on the other end, it kind of seems like you said it was set up for failure. So it kind of feels like a paradox.
Yeah, well, I would agree with, for us who's trying to win, we need self-responsibility more. Because let me tell you something. Some of us made it out of there pretty good. I got some friends that's like retired military airline flyers, pilots, and all that. I know some dentists. I know a lot of people from that neighborhood that's in all walks of life. You know what I mean? So not all of them turned out to be in jail, in drugs, or whatever. You know what I mean? So it has a lot to do with personalities, groups. You know what I'm saying? As a whole, well, I don't want to say whole, but as a majority, a lot of people didn't make it. A lot of people didn't get it. I would say, wow, and this is scary. I would say 45, 55, something like that.
Percent?
Yeah. I would, if I was to be honest. And you know what? It changed. I gotta say this. It changed in the later years to less people striving to do better. Yeah, it changed. When the younger generation took over and started having their own apartments and that old thing there, the percentage went way down on people who were progressing and becoming better. Yeah. My mom, my grandma, and that whole group, my uncles, and right after me, it started to go downhill.
What kind of cultural event or what things happened to get to that point? To have such a decrease in motivation?
Crack cocaine.
You think so?
Yeah.
The whole thing?
Crack cocaine. Crack cocaine, it really socked them up. It took the air out of a lot of situations, out of a lot of communities. Yeah, it did. And just drugs, period, because heroin is a killer too, and they dropped some of that on them too. You know what I mean? So, it ran rampant, drugs, and that's what and I kind of hate to point that finger, but I know that people had something to do with that. I know they did. I know they had something to do with it. And I'm not making excuses. You know what I mean? Because you can't get in your body unless you put it in your body. But you don't need to give people a whole lot of opportunities to use drugs, especially when they're already downtrodden and feeling bad and depressed and all that. You know what I mean? It's just not a good thing. And most people start off with alcohol too. And they made it legal. You know what I mean? So it's just, it can happen. But yeah, that played a big role too in the demise of the people, man, and the structure of family. A lot of moms got lost, a lot of dads got lost. Children wind up taking. That's why these little kids now are so mean, because they self-raised. You gotta imagine, these kids ain't never had a hug. That's why they heartless. You know what I mean? They don't feel nothing. It's like this. When a child don't love his own mother, what do you think you care about mine or yours? So that's what we're dealing with. These kids don't have a lot of feelings, man. Love. Nobody's telling them I love you. Give me a hug. They don't know what that means. They know what they butt in the street. And then, see, it's so large, even to the music. You know what music they promote? They promote the idiot music. So they in on it too. They in on it too. It's a big job. It's a big job. But suffer because of it. You know, little neighborhoods.
So can you talk about like the economic situation generally of the people that lived around you and yourself, your family?
Yeah, well, it was two. It was two parts. You had the working. Well, okay, three parts. You had the working class people who got up. My grandma, Miss Reed, Miss Clark. I know Miss Chew, a ton of them. The working class people, ladies, and a few men. You know, they ran all the men out of the neighborhood throughout the projects. They said your man can't live with you. Did you know that? They wasn't allowed, but some of them still came back anyway. But they wasn't allowed. But so you had three economic positions. It was the working class people, the welfare people, and the hustling people. Now, when I first say the hustling people, first thing most people think about is drug dealers. Well, let me tell you something. They had another group come out of my neighborhood, which was probably part of the reason why they wanted them out of there too. They called till tappers, sneak thieves.
Till tappers?
That's what the old word for it is. Young
What does
people.
that mean?
I mean, you can sneak around,
And do what?
steal. I know guys who went in office buildings and take whole safes out and, oh yeah, for real, go in safes. I knew a guy one time used to bring safes to the projects and throw them off the 19th floor and try to break them open.
Wow.
So you had a whole group of them guys, and I promise you, I'm not making this up. I can name at least 5 of them right off the top of my head, but I won't. But these was the guys that was a group that we looked up to, cause they had a lot of money. First time I seen a band around the money when these guys had it. You know what I mean? And they used to have a lot of money. You know what I mean? And so it was those three groups: the working people, the welfare people, and the hustlers. And in my neighborhood, didn't nobody really hurt for nothing. It wasn't. I'm serious. Now, see, it's two parts to this. I come from a part where the adults were in charge. Then there was another part where the kids were in charge. So I mostly lean towards the part when the adults were in charge. You know what I mean? And whatever adults they were, even the crooks were respected. Everybody was respected. You know what I mean? Everybody. I mean, I grew up a bad boy.